and for the weekend. Oh, there you go. Do you want to get that on record? What you're doing over there?
We'll maybe not start with that. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to give it a minute as we start to watch people flow in, but we're recording, we're live. So we'll watch people filter, and I can see the numbers going up there now. A big welcome to everybody and a happy new year. It is officially January 2022, and hopefully most people have been back to work for a few days now. If you're like me in any way, and Vinay probably the same, it takes a little while to get that work brain switched back on properly after the Christmas break. Too much food, too much wine, too much chocolate, all the normal stuff. But thank you for joining today if you're with us. This is one of the most exciting webinars for me. I think this is just so pertinent right at the start of the new year, because we all have this feeling, I think, as we go into January of, almost new year. And even if it's not new me, improved me, what's happening this year? What can I be doing this year? What's going to be great? And employability is a huge topic, something that we talk about a lot at Fabric, and we're going to be lucky enough to be able to pick Vinay's brains for the next hour or so. But yeah, I mean, I guess what's really interesting is employability and increasing employability in a really tough marketplace. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Vinay, just to give you a little intro before I pass over to him to do it in his own words, is CEO of Capital Placement and also is the host of a very cool podcast called the Career Growth Podcast. So if you haven't got that on your podcast list, have a listen. It's great. He's helped thousands of young people secure internships with over an 80% offer, a full-time role within 6 months, which is exactly what you're looking for, isn't it? When you go into internship, you're looking for that offer of a full-time job. Through his podcast and Vinay's network, he's delivered honest advice to people around the world who are looking to accelerate their careers. And we know our community here at Fabric are ambitious and they're really looking to succeed. And we talk a lot about accelerating in our careers. So I'm so happy, Vinay, that we're going to have your opinion on this today. For anybody who is completely new to the Fabric Level Up webinar series, just a little bit of general housekeeping here. So we are going to chat over as much as we can in the next 30 minutes. I'm going to be firing questions at Vinay. He's going to be giving us all his expertise. And then we're going to open the floor to you guys to answer any questions that you might have. So just at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that there is a Q&A box. Feel free for the next 30 minutes to be popping your questions in there. I won't answer any of them until we get through the first part, but just pile them up in there. And as soon as we're done with the first session, we'll start to open that up and we'll try and get through everybody's questions if we possibly can. So, Vinay, a huge thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for a very generous introduction as well. It's great to be here. Super excited for the year, and hope everyone had a great kind of end of the year / beginning of the year. Everyone managed to get some downtime and prepare for the year ahead. It should be exciting for everyone, hopefully.
Absolutely. And I know we've got so many people in our community, because we engage with them all the time, that are always looking for that next role or that first role, or often just how to get on the career ladder. And I think January is always a prime time for that, isn't it? Right? You kind of cleared off Christmas, what's coming for the year ahead. So I'm really excited to get stuck into this. But before we do, with any questions, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, your background?
Yeah, sure. So where do I start? So my name is Vinay. I studied law at university, and while we were, so me and my co-founder Niren, while we were studying, we realized there's a huge kind of opportunity, or there's a lot of companies that are focused on internships, but they were done more from an employer's perspective. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners here would have got messages from recruiters who are representing companies, etc. And there wasn't a lot in the market that's representing students and helping them with their employability. So obviously there's the careers department at university, and people generally tend to have mixed feelings about careers departments. I'm not going to elaborate on that one. So we thought that we could potentially help students with internships, and specifically internships abroad. So we started the company while we were in our second year at university. And then by the time we got to a third year, we dropped out and have been working on capital placement full time since then. Along the way, we've built some sister companies up. So we've got a recruitable company, a company called Recruitable, but we also got something called the Consulting Company. And everything is focused around internships and the first graduate job for students and recent graduates, essentially. So that's me and my background.
Amazing, amazing. And so, I mean, your story is so relatable because, you know, you set up a business, you went out on your own while you were still at uni studying, but to really fill that gap in the market. And we know there's just such a huge need for this. And I guess what we term as bridging that gap between academia and industry, and making sure that all those, you know, years of hard work and all that, you know, the money and the time that goes into getting that degree is put to really good use. And I guess what we're both trying to do collaboratively is give people that foot up, you know, really help them get on the ladder, really help them get into that profession or the industry that they want to work in. Yeah, amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we're right at the start of the new year, as we know, and the world has changed so much in the last couple of years. I mean, you know, I don't need to go into the kind of fundamentals, but we know we're living in a very different place now. What can people do simply to increase their employability in 2022? Are there any fundamentals that they can really be thinking about to help increase this?
Really good question there, Lisa. I'll probably start off by saying that's quite a pretty broad question. There's no kind of right or one definitive way that someone can be a lot more employable this year. And but there are a lot of actions that students and recent graduates can take to make sure that one step closer to reaching their goals. I'll probably kind of follow that up by asking, what does employability mean to you or to someone who's listening to this? So if it means getting a job or getting a great job this year in 2022, there are tons of opportunities. Then, you know, look at emerging and cutting edge technologies like there's a whole kind of movement around metaverse, blockchain, and then obviously following up on that, cryptocurrencies, etc. These are great opportunities this year and going forward. They're going to play a big part. Just as an example, Facebook or Meta, as it's known now, is looking to hire 10,000 people across Europe for their metaverse. So that's a lot of people that they're hiring, and a big chunk of that's going to be in the UK. So if that is something, if employability means working for a great company, great salary, a great career track. I'm not personally a huge fan of Meta, but if you know, it's a great company to work for. A lot of the large technology firms are, and so that's potentially an area to look into. But broadly speaking, I would say look into emerging areas, so emerging technology, and also building up your knowledge as soon as possible. So even if that's not an area you want to go into, just familiarize yourself with what that means. So we've heard about cryptocurrencies and the underlying technology behind that being blockchain. Just having a working understanding of that will definitely help. Even if you're not in that industry, it's very likely that, if I take you as an example, Lisa, you might have a client that's in that industry. So having a working understanding of that will definitely help. Metaverse and how that works and what kind of skills are required. So building up your knowledge in all these areas will definitely help you become a lot more employable. And that's probably what I would say to start off with. The second thing I'll probably say is look at emerging technology that you can use as tools. So there's a whole range of tools and a lot of opportunities that started up in the last couple of years. And going forward, that's only going to get much bigger. So I'll probably say TikTok as a platform is not something that you can advertise on 2 years ago, but today you can advertise on that. That's going to change as we're going forward. There's going to be a lot of other opportunities where you, in marketing, there's going to be a lot more opportunities. And even outside of marketing, for every kind of industry, there's going to be tools that you can use. There's a range of SaaS platforms that's come up that can help automate a lot of things that were traditionally done manually or would require a lot of hours to do that. You can probably cut that down into minutes or if not seconds. So familiarizing yourself with those kind of tools in your industry or industry that you aspire to get into would definitely help you. And adding that to your CV will definitely score some serious brownie points with prospective employers. And hopefully over the course of the webinar, we'll cover a lot of those things, the tips and the tricks. And but just want to remind you, there's no kind of like silver bullet to being more employable. It's a journey and not a destination. So we'll cover some of the things over the course of the webinar. But great question to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, straight in the deep end there for you. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's not a case of, tick these boxes and you will instantly be more
Yeah,
employable.
exactly.
It's a job in itself, isn't it? Making yourself employable. You've got to be committing to it. You've got to be continuously working on it. And I think that's really great advice, actually, in terms of just keeping abreast of the kind of news, global news, in terms of those emerging companies, those emerging trends. Because one of the things that we all struggle with, particularly when you're looking for a new role, is often niche roles are so crowded. That marketplace is so tricky, and you're competing really, really hard. If you're looking at a space which is far more emergent, that you've mentioned 10,000 jobs being kind of recruited for in around the globe, in the UK as well. You've got much bigger chances of being seen when there's a lot of jobs there. And I guess just thinking about that a little bit more, the job market we know is crowded, particularly because we know there's a lot of marketers within our community. So many of our listeners might be thinking about marketing. And experience, sadly enough, but it still can be make or break, can't it, when you're trying to secure that dream role? It's this kind of chicken and egg between, you're a graduate and you've clearly been studying, so you haven't been working, but, employers are still looking for some sort of experience. And it's often really tricky to get that experience. And I think particularly so over the last 2 years, we've spent a portion of it in lockdown. We've spent a portion of it working remotely. How can people go about finding the right experience to help drive their career forward there?
Another great question there, Lisa. I would first off start off by saying this is one of the hardest things. And the reason behind it is you don't know what you don't know. And I'm just going to let that settle in for a second so that you can understand. So I think for the first part of getting the right experience is actually knowing what the right experience is. And if you don't know what that is, that's often the biggest challenge. So in terms of looking at the right kind of experience, a couple of things I would suggest. One is look at the job descriptions that are published by companies that you aspire to work for. So if you're a current student or if you're recently graduated and you feel like you're not quite there for some other companies, but everyone has like an aspirational list of companies that they wish to apply for. It might not be today that you're looking to apply, but it could be a month, it could be 6, it could be a couple of years away. But look at those companies, follow their job description, see what kind of skill set they're looking for and knowledge that they're looking for from candidates so that you can start building up those experiences going forward. Building on that, which is slightly similar, I'll probably say, look at the roles and look at people on LinkedIn and look at their career path as what they've taken to kind of get to that job. So again, those are kind of, I'd say treat it as a stepping stone, essentially. So you might not necessarily be ready today. And if that is the case, think about what you can do, work your way up and treat every kind of your next steps as a stepping stone towards that job. So look at the job description, look at people who work in that company, look at what they've done, what they're currently doing in that company, but also what they've done previously to kind of get themselves into that role. And the third thing I'll probably say is follow key industry leaders on LinkedIn, see what they're talking about. I'm going to put a shameless plug here. I know, Lisa, you're very active on LinkedIn. So if you're not following Lisa already, follow her on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of updates that she posts and really, really insightful content on there. So again, keeping up with industry trends is something that will definitely help you. And just going back to what you mentioned to my previous answer, it's almost a habit being commercially aware, and it's not something that you do just before you're looking for your next job or while you're applying for jobs. Make that in a habit. So on a weekly basis, ideal on a daily basis, check what's happening in the news. There's tons of resources out there in marketing, especially where there are blogs, there are platforms. Obviously, Fabric is great. There are lots of key influencers on LinkedIn that you can follow to see what's happening in the industry, and make that a habit so you follow. And so it's not like, we've all been there where the night before, the week before an exam, you're trying to cram in as much information as possible. And we all know that we should have been revising all along the term rather than leave it until the last minute. So make sure you do that. With the same with when it comes to applying for jobs. So build up that knowledge over time and try not to leave it until the last minute and trying to cram in as much information as possible before an interview. And ultimately, that's only going to help you if you're working at the moment. That's only going to help make you better at your day job while you're looking at future opportunities. So that's what I would say when it comes down to finding the right experience to drive your career. It's just making sure you keep on top of what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's such brilliant advice, Vinay, because often it's not about the lack of desire or the commitment to go out and find that experience. It's often exactly what you mentioned there, not knowing what is the right experience to have. And something very simple, that piece of advice, I think, is a bit of gold dust in the sense of just be looking at the job descriptions of those aspirational roles that you're looking to hold. And, what are they listing? And simply ticking up and down them. Yes, I've got some experience here. No, these are some gaps. Therefore, I need to go out and plug those gaps and find that experience. For me personally, I know if I was to take myself back to, my younger self, that would have been such an easy way to start to think about how I can start to build on those experiences, because sometimes you're just completely overwhelmed with, where to start, and particularly in marketing, because, there's so many different platforms, new algorithms, trends, techniques. It's so overwhelming when you're working in marketing, never mind if you're thinking about a career here, to know where to start. So I think that's invaluable advice, really, really great practical stuff that our community can be taken on board. And I mean, of course, internships are obviously a great way, aren't they, to get a taster of your chosen field, and they can start to give you that valuable experience. They can start to give you an idea of, is this dream role the career for you? Is it what you expected it to be? Do you absolutely love it now and you're full steam ahead? Actually, is it nothing like you thought it was going to be? And are you having to reassess those kind of thoughts? But I guess from past years, there sometimes has been a bit of a bad rap around internships, because some of them can be very low paid, and some of them don't even offer the practical experience that you would expect to get. What are the red flags for people to look out for if they're thinking about applying for an internship?
No, good questions today, Lisa. And I'll come to that in one second. Just to kind of go over something that you briefly mentioned. I think with internships, I think even when they don't go to plan, as you said, you might end up hating it. That's also a great learning curve, and I'm so happy to hear that when someone does that during an internship and not a full-time job, because that takes a lot more commitment. And often when you have a full-time job, you've got rent to pay, you've got all those extra financial pressure that comes with it, and you kind of sometimes end up in a position where you can't quit until you find another job, because it can be a financial burden. So it's great when things don't go to plan as well. At least you know what you don't enjoy, and that you can learn a lot from that. So, and then coming back to your actual question, when it comes to internship, and for any job that for that matter, I would say you should be either learning or earning in that job. Ideally both. If neither, it's time for you to look for other opportunities. And that's something that I advise to every single candidate that's looking for, especially early on in their career. Probably early on in their career, pay a bit more. I would probably say emphasize a lot more on the learning side rather than the earning side early on in your career. I'm not saying it's any less important. Of course, you got to earn, you got bills to pay, etc. All of that is really important. But the focus early on in your career should be on the learning side. But like I said, ideally learning and earning. If neither, time to look for a new job. With that out of the way, in terms of red flags, I think a couple of things to look out for. So one is a poorly written job description is often a serious red flag. If an employer can't be bothered to spend that time to write a proper job description, it tells you, or it indicates, I'm not saying this is always the case, but it indicates that they might not necessarily value that intern's experience with that company. So that's an obvious red flag. What does a good job description look like? I'll probably say anything more than 5 bullet points is probably a good place to start. Anything with less than 5, you probably should avoid that. And see if there's an emphasis. Look at the language that they use. Is that language kind of showing that you will be doing or you'll be assisting? So using words such as assisting, working with, etc., will mean that you have a they value as an internship and not as a replacement for a full-time job. So if they use words like you will be responsible for XYZ, although that is great, that to me sounds like someone's looking for cheap labor as opposed to valuing that experience. So that's definitely a red flag. So poorly written job description. Second thing I'll probably say is go onto LinkedIn, look at how many interns they currently have, and look at the ratio between the number of interns and the number of full-time staff. PRSCP, we're very strict about 5 full-time employees to 1 intern ratio. That ensures that the intern is not there to replace someone's job, so it's not a cheap labor. And ideally, they have multiple supervisors who can then get a diverse range of work from. So it's not just every day is the same when they're working with one supervisor. I've seen companies where it's the other way around. There's 5 interns for every employee there. That's often a big red flag. That to me is it's definitely a company that I would definitely want to stay away from. This is not a hard and fast rule, but 95% of the time, this is the case. And so I'll probably say stay away from those. Obviously, there are very early stage companies where you might have 2 or 3 co-founders and they're looking for their first intern. That's okay. I think that's acceptable. But if they have 2 people and they have 8, 9, 10 interns, stay away from those companies. The next thing I'll probably also say is look at where the past interns are today who worked in that company. Do they have they gone on to work for companies that you would ideally like to work for? So that's also a great way if they are. So look at the LinkedIn. Obviously, you can see people who have previously worked in that company on LinkedIn. So look through and see where they are today. And last but not least, check Glassdoor reviews. We live in a day and age where everything's got a review. And so check out what the employer's reviews state. So if you see a number of past interns or even employees that have gone on to leave bad reviews, I would pay a lot of attention to that. But I say with employer reviews, take that with a pinch of salt, because just like with most reviews, people only leave a review when it's really great or really bad. And often with Glassdoor, there's a lot of really bad reviews, but you might not necessarily see a lot of the benefits. So try and see the whole picture and then make an informed decision. Don't be afraid to ask friends or more experienced colleagues or family members as well for their advice, because obviously your parents or your older siblings will have a much better idea if you're very early on in your career in terms of what a bad company may look like, and just get their opinion as well. So these are just a number of things to check. There's no hard and fast rule when it comes to like a really bad company or a really great company. There are lots of really big companies where unfortunately, they have really, really bad internship programs. I'm not sure if you've heard a couple of years ago, we've had interns who have unfortunately died at workplaces because how bad it is. They're really big companies because they're overworked. So just because it's a big company and they meet everything that I just discussed, it doesn't guarantee that will be a great internship. Some of it just comes down to luck as well, who your supervisor is. And unfortunately, you don't really get to know that until you probably start your internship. But if it doesn't work out, try and quit, because it's not something that I say very lightly, but if you just cannot take anymore, there's always other options, and it doesn't have to define your next job. So if it does get a bit too much, don't be afraid to take a step back from that opportunity.
Yeah, and some really brilliant tips there, just in terms of things to look out for. And I mean, the power of LinkedIn is just unreal now, right? It's like such a valuable
Definitely.
tool for anybody looking to get into the job market from scratch, but also, throughout your entire career. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I always am an advocate of reaching out to people on LinkedIn, not kind of scattergun and going after everybody, but if there's a company that you really love and you see there's an intern there who's on LinkedIn, I mean, I would be happy to reach out to that person and ask their advice. What's it like to work there? How is it doing? And, you won't always get people replying to you cold, but often people will. And particularly if you're asking for help or advice, people are so kind with their time a lot of the time. And if you're thinking about going there and you can visibly see there's internships or somebody's working for the company who has been through an internship, drop them a message, see if you can get some real insight from them. I don't know if that's something that you would ever be an advocate of, Vinay, but I just think sometimes LinkedIn can be quite intimidating, can't it? It can be quite a daunting place for people. But if you start to relax a little bit on there and you use it to your full capacity, and you can put a message into anybody's inbox in the world who's on there. It's fascinating how connecting it can be. Just be brave and reach out to people and see their thoughts.
100% agree, Lisa. And I think people have a different mentality when they look at their LinkedIn inbox as opposed to their email inbox. So I think you probably have much better luck if you send them a message on LinkedIn or even tweet them. You probably have a much better response than sending them an email. The only thing I'll probably say to that is put your question in that initial request. One of the things that it's just when people connect with me, they often don't have a message. I'm not really sure what I'm there or how I can add value to them. So if you just put that message, just say, hey, Vinay, or hey, Lisa, I'm looking to do X, Y, Z. Just would love to get your thoughts on this. Can we connect? I'll say, yes. I respond to every single one of those messages, and I'll always come back and say, okay, this is, depending on what the question is, I'll try and help them in any way I can. If I can't help, I'll try and signpost them to someone who can and try and do an intro. And people are very generous on LinkedIn. And so it's, the whole concept of it is there might be times where you might not necessarily want to walk up to a person and ask a question, but LinkedIn gives you that kind of cover where you can go ahead and do that. What's the worst case scenario? They don't reply to you. Okay, so what? Move on to the next person if you want to speak to them. So definitely make use of LinkedIn and connect, but just be upfront about what you're asking for. So, and then that way, the person on the other end can see if they can help you or not. So just don't be afraid. Ask questions on LinkedIn, and ask for intros as well. If they know someone, or if you know someone that you can see is connected to someone that you know, ask that person for an intro and see if they'll be kind enough to do an intro. And if that is the case, you'll probably have a much better luck as well. So if you think someone may not necessarily reply to you, but someone that person knows, just ask for an intro and you probably have a better luck. So yeah, 100%. LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. Keep that active, and just try and it comes down to networking, I guess, but try and build up a network slowly on LinkedIn, and it'll definitely come in useful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so just thinking about travel a little bit now, and I guess there's loads of young people who have obviously the desire to travel the world. And I guess there is potentially a worry that if you do that, it could negatively impact your career, particularly if you've been in a role and then you take a big break to go and travel the world. And often employers can ask why the gap, and it's not always seen as positive, even though it should be. Your company, Capital Placement, obviously provides internships on a global scale. What are the benefits to completing an international internship for those who are excited by that?
So just as you mentioned, Lisa, often traveling, taking some time off, usually will leave a gap on your CV. We can, with our programs, is actually designed in a way where you're working abroad. So there is no gap on your CV. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So you're kind of doing your internship and traveling. And especially if you're doing some of our longer term internships, the bulk of them are paid. So it's great. You get to travel to New York, Singapore, Berlin, or even London if you're from outside of the UK, to come, and you get to work here, live in that city for anywhere between 6 weeks to 2 years, essentially. And you can build up quite a strong experience there. And imagine just, we get a lot of candidates who have grown up in country A, they studied in country B, so they went to university abroad, and they're looking to get some experience abroad as well, so they get some work experience in country C. That person's CV is going to say so many different countries, and that is super impressive, and often that's what will set you apart from other candidates when you're applying for roles. In time for experience, I'm not sure, as an employer, I'm sure you would have seen some candidates who have international experience, and it's always a starting point. It helps get your foot through the door, and with the exact same experience, employers value the fact that you've taken a risk, you've moved abroad, you've lifted your entire life, and you've moved abroad to work there, understood a different culture. And we live in a world where we have customers from all over the world, and it's great to have colleagues who can perhaps relate to some of those customers, and that's definitely useful. I'm not going to dwell on too much about this, but the research is out there, so just look at the benefits of international internships, and it pretty much speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because it's something that if I could go back 20 years, that would be absolutely the route I would take now. But I think, again, that is daunting. It's about, can I do it? The support, will I know what to do? I don't speak the language. How will I find my way? And this is why what you do is, so amazing. It just gives those people that opportunity to be able to do that, but with support, without the kind of, the worry around it. So just talking a little bit about soft skills there, I guess, in terms of employers often look for soft skills, sometimes in grads, particularly more so than experience, because, they know they haven't been working. How can you showcase those soft skills on your CV? Because that's pretty tricky, right?
Yeah, so I think a lot of candidates, this is very daunting, but it all comes down to transferable skills. So if you worked in retail, if you worked in hospitality, or if you are part of a club or a society at university, all of these things, you do build up soft skills, and that is transferable. Highlight those. But I think in terms of key skills looking forward to, in terms of 2022, I'll probably say look at especially us. We're looking for candidates that are who can embrace change and exhibit adaptability. That's quite an important thing. And no real surprise that we're going to start with this one. With the shift to remote work, the emotional upheaval that's come with it, and also it's been pretty much the defining theme of the last couple of years now. It's crazy that this started nearly 2 years ago. So what we are looking for are candidates that can showcase to us that they can embrace change and exhibit adaptability. It's really important. So a lot of candidates can show that. And I think a lot of candidates often underestimate the skills that they have. And it comes down to perhaps speaking to someone about it. And that will say, oh, actually, you can, they might highlight some of those skills. They're like, okay, you can highlight XYZ skill from that experience. So it comes down to showcasing that. That's going to be really important. At some stage, we'll probably go into either kind of like going back to office, and there's that remote working. And it's been a bit of a jumble over the last 6 months, especially. So how can you showcase to us that you can cope with that, as an example? And most importantly, show us that you can seek opportunities in those kind of periods where there's a lot of change. So I'm someone who sees change as an opportunity. And so show to me that you have those skills. The type of questions that we'll be asking is like, what was your experience during COVID, as an example? What new things have you tried recently? These are kind of questions that we ask in our interviews. And the answers to that show us how they embrace change and exhibit adaptability. Second thing I'll probably say is classic team working. And I think team working is easier when you're in a room with people, and it's a lot harder when you're working remotely. So we want to see evidence of team working. And one of the ways I kind of look at this is in an interview, how many times do they say I versus we in an interview? Do they like to take credit? Because I know a lot of the things on CV, you kind of have to work as a team. And do they give credit to their colleagues, as an example? And this is where empathy will come in, which is one of the points I'll come into. But it's really important to showcase that you can work as a team, even when you're not in the same room, or even in the same country or same continent for that matter now. So that's really, really important. And empathy, I'm not going to go into it too much detail. I think there's a lot of talk about that, and it's something is really, really important. It's very difficult to showcase, but there are, if you want to learn more about that, we've got an entire podcast on that on our channel. So listen to that, and there's a fantastic episode on that. But the last but not very least that I'll probably say is the ability to maintain a work-life balance is an important skill, I think, going forward. Believe it or not, most employers don't want you to work 24/7. It's not any employer wants you. It's not sustainable. Of course, there might be times where you might have to work slightly later than what you want to, but it's not something that any employer wants you to sustain over a period of time. So what we're looking for are ability for you to control when you start and stop work, how you manage that time, and don't just leave it to the employer to dictate when you work, what you do, etc. I'm pretty much known in the company as someone who's just like a Slack monitor. If I see people online past a certain time, I'm dropping them a message saying like, why are you still working, etc. So I think I want to see candidates who can maintain and manage their own workload and do that, because Lisa, I'm sure you can appreciate this. When you're sat in the same room, you know when a colleague is overworked. But when when you're working remotely, it's very difficult to see that. So that's something that that you probably want to highlight, that you have the ability to manage that. Because going into office, the moment you walk in, you kind of switch on to work mode. You walk out of the office, you switch off. But when you're working in the same room, you spend a lot of time, almost 24/7 in the same room. How can you do that? Show to me that you can organize yourself over that course of that day, the week, etc. So those are kind of skills that I'm looking for. A lot of the other things, this is just compounding on what's been talked about previously about all the other soft skills. So these are just skills that I'm looking at for this year in particular.
And I think that last one is so important because, even if you've been studying, it's likely that you've been studying under remote conditions. And how can you then, showcase that you've been able to work in your bedroom, then leave there, go and have family time, or, time outside, or, at the gym, or whatever it is. But it's being able to apply that to your own situation. And I think that's so important because, we were thrust into remote work, and, most of us who had never worked in that situation before, and for a period of time, it was fine to work all hours of the day, but that isn't sustainable, as you say. And we've all had to reteach ourselves those lessons. So I think that's such an important thing. I mean, in terms of us recruiting, I would love to see that on a CV. Somebody explain to me how they've managed to adapt to remote working, but also maintain a healthy work-life balance. I think that would be a real standout for me. So that's a great piece of advice. And I guess just thinking about CVs, because sometimes, people feel that these can often be the be all and end all. You're kind of putting your life and soul into a piece of paper, and you're essentially a faceless number for a period of time. Any tips for creating a standout CV?
I would say there's no silver bullet. It's the honest answer. There's no kind of like standout CV that will probably say this is going to guarantee you X number of interviews. But there are things that you can do to help yourself. And in 95% of the case, I'll probably say keep it simple. Just black and white CV. It's very easy for the person that's reading it. I understand why you may want to create a very fancy and quirky CV, but for the person reading it, and spare a thought for the person reading it because they might have hundreds, if not thousands, of CVs to go through. And just a simple, well laid out CV is my favorite, and I love seeing this. And I give a lot of brownie points for candidates who just do that. Simple, just name, contact details, email address, LinkedIn URL, and your education background, any work experience, followed by skills and hobbies and interests. And that hobbies and interest section is super important for me because I want to get to know that person as a person, not just, if you're a current student or if you're a recent graduate, just think about, being sat in a lecture theatre. Everyone that studied your degree will have a pretty similar degree. And what makes you stand out is your hobbies and interests and probably perhaps that internship section. But show to me who you are as a person and show a bit more personality. So that's definitely going to help. So keeping it simple. I would also say, try not to make any jokes or try to keep it simple. When I was doing my A-levels, I was told by my career counselor that don't make any jokes in your UCAS application. So the same goes to like kind of design and layout of your CV. So the person that's reading it may not necessarily appreciate it. So just keep it very simple. And I'll probably say, remember CV, if you're applying to big companies, so you probably need a couple of different approaches. So if you're applying to large companies, your CV is not reviewed by a human in the first couple of rounds. It's something called an ATS system. So what you want to get on there are keywords essentially. So make sure you have the right keywords. So if you're asking me what the right keywords are, go back to the job description. It will be there. Those are the keywords that you want to incorporate into your CV. So make sure you have that on there. If it's going to be reviewed by a human, if you're applying to a small firm, so I'll probably say anything less than 50 employees, it's often reviewed by a human. And so in that case, your CV will probably want to take a slightly different approach. And coming to that, I would say, try and get into the habit of creating a master CV. And this is something that you go back and update almost every month and you add to it. So this will go on to pages and pages and pages. It's very difficult. So if you're in a role for a couple of years, it's very difficult for you to think back and think of all the things that you did or you achieved and to list it all in a CV. So just try and get into a habit of updating your CV every month or every quarter. And once you do that, you create a master CV. And every time you apply for a job, make sure you have a custom CV for that role because you're looking at the job description, you're matching your past experiences to that. And when you do that, once you get the hang of it, you can probably copy and paste the CV together from your master CV in probably under 10 minutes. So just get into the habit of doing that, and that will definitely help you. Customized CVs is definitely going to help make your life a lot easier. You've probably heard of horror stories where candidates applied for like 100 or 200 made 200 job applications and have got rejections. Often it comes down to just using the same CV. It's not you applying to 200 different. It's not like you were applying to 200 of the same job. So why are you using the same CV to apply to 200 different companies? Every company is unique. Try and appreciate that and also add that to your CV. So just to kind of summarize my tips, I'll say keep it simple, black and white ideally, keep the structure very simple. Try not to make any jokes, add loads of color, etc. To that. Have a master CV, customize your CV for every role. We've got tons of blogs on our website about CVs. Check those out. And I'm pretty sure my colleague Angel's done some posts on Instagram as well. So check those out and it's super useful. But just in a nutshell, that's what I'd probably say.
Brilliant. And I wish I'd taken a bit of that advice myself last year, because you never stop needing your CV, do you? Right. I've had my own businesses for the last 10 years. And I recently went for a board position last year and had to do a CV, and trying to think of a decade worth of things that I'd been doing is really tricky. And it goes to remind you that actually, you never stop needing that CV. It's something that will follow you all through your life. And it's a really, really valuable tool. So keeping it up to date on a regular basis, even when you get that first job or you get that dream job, don't start updating it. I think that's great. And I'll take a little bit of that advice on as well. And just quickly before we move off CVs, because we're slowly starting to creep into the Q&A questions, but I'm just interested because there is so much on social now about these crazy, wacky types of CVs, particularly in marketing in the creative sector. And I'm sure you will have seen them, people being sent cakes with their faces on, big exploding buttons with confetti coming out with the person on, is that an absolute no-no, Vinay? Do you keep well away from that? And
It's a good question. I would say it's horses for courses, really. So I would say 95% of the cases, it may not necessarily work, and you don't know how it's going to be received by that end person. And even if it's actually going to be viewed by a person, a colorful CV which runs into multiple pages where information is not clearly laid out is often a nightmare to get the information from an ATS systems perspective. So it will just automatically reject you. So I'm sure you've all been in a position where sometimes you make an application, within 10 minutes you get a rejection. You're like scratching your head. It's like, there's no way someone read that in 10 minutes. It's often because it was rejected by an ATS system. The information that they were looking for, it's just not there. But if you're applying to a marketing agency, as an example, as you have, and if you have under 20, 25 employees, that might be appreciated, because it shows the amount of effort that you put in, and it comes down to someone valuing that. And absolutely, that could work. But I would probably say that's the exception rather than the norm. So don't get into doing that. For an investment banking job, you probably shouldn't be sending the CEO a cake with confetti and stuff. That's probably not going to help your case.
That's not my cup of tea either. So.
What are your thoughts on it, Lisa? What are your thoughts on?
I think it's wacky. I think, it's a great way to stand out, of course, isn't it? And be memorable and to be picked in a really crowded space. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. You've got to be able to back it up with the goods, I think. So I think you're absolutely right. If you're going to do it with the odd chosen company that you absolutely want to work for. You can't do that approach for everybody. But I am with you, Vinay. I love a very simple CV. I want to hear about the person. I'm far less interested in their experience and their skill set, because I can teach that. I want to know who they are, their ambition, their drive, what excites them, what their passion is. So yeah, I'm with you. I like a good old black and white CV, I'm afraid. And we're a creative industry, so maybe I'm a bit old school there. Okay, I'm just going to finish off with one last question on a pretty serious kind of topic, because I think this is really important to cover as well, but just, I guess, imposter syndrome. And I guess we talk about this a lot in business, but we talk about this a lot in life generally. And I think it's something that's prevalent in all stages of our career. I think the younger you are, you often think it's something that you struggle with when you're young, but it never, imposter syndrome never goes away. There's always an instance where you just feel like you don't deserve a seat at the table, or you shouldn't be in that room. It can be a real barrier for people, can't it, in terms of applying for either their first role or senior roles, or roles that they just think there's not a hope in hell's chance I'm going to get that role. But, they've actually got a really good chance of getting it. Any tips or advice you could give people to try and help combat that or overcome it?
Yeah, it's a really good question again, Lisa. This is something that I had when I was 19. So I started a company, I became a CEO at the age of 19. And it was quite difficult. And I think one of the things that I've really learned is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess. And if you can just accept the fact that you're probably never ready, or this doesn't have any relevance to whether you are or you're not. It's just the way you think. And so that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. It's getting comfortable with you being uncomfortable. So I think for me personally, it pushed me a lot into learning and filling those gaps. And I kind of felt like, okay, so I feel like an imposter. This is what people in this kind of role may look like. So looking at other people's LinkedIn as an example, and then forcing myself to learn about those gaps that I have, that helped a lot. And like you said, Lisa, in the vast majority of cases, you already have the skill, you already have the knowledge, and you're ready for that. And there's a reason why someone put you in that role. It's because others believe that you are capable. It's just you. It's often it's inside you. And I think just telling yourself that other people believe in you will definitely help. And the fact that you're already there, no one's like, it's very, very, very unlikely that you're going to be put in a role where no one trusts that you can get on with that job. People hired you for a reason. And these are people that have seen the potential and also what you already have, not just your potential, but you already have those skills and knowledge that is required for that role. So I would say focus on those two and try and be inquisitive. There's a lot of traits that will help you, and it will potentially, it's about getting comfortable, and also if you feel like there's a gap in your armor, just try and fill in those gaps as you go along. So there's no real kind of shortcut to not feeling like an imposter. But a lot of it, it's just understanding that it's only you that feel that way. No one else thinks that. So just get comfortable with that.
That's so interesting, actually, and really, really great. Of get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I really love that. And I guess just knowing that, probably 90% of the population have or feel imposter syndrome at some point in their life. So you're not alone. And that knowing that belief is there from other people, is what can drive you. There's a great TED talk called Fake It Till You Make It, which is all about imposter syndrome. And it's all about how to kind of energize your body. And if you're going into that situation, it's a great one to check out if anybody's struggling with that. But I'm going to cover a couple of quick questions now, because we've got a few questions flowing in. So I'll fire these at you, Vinay. I'm going to start with Naomi. So, hi, Naomi. She's asking, what is the significance of a personal brand? Does it impact promotions, etc.?
This is probably a question that I'm probably not the best person to answer. I keep a very low profile across social media. I'm actually not on the vast majority of social media. The only thing I'm on is LinkedIn, and that's just me. I do a lot of my networking in private as opposed to posting. So, and obviously I'm in a very different position, and I appreciate that. And I think that's, I'm in quite a privileged position. So when it comes to promotions, it comes down to visibility, especially when you're working remotely, showing your colleagues, showing your boss what you're doing, and creating and having that building up a personal brand is going to be quite important. It very much depends on what your aspirations are, and building up a personal brand. Lisa, you're probably in a far better position to answer this than me. I'll probably say it comes with a lot of negatives as well, because you kind of have to deal with comments, which some of them may not necessarily be positive as you're building up that personal brand. But Lisa, what are your thoughts on this question? Because I don't feel like I'm the best person to answer this.
No, absolutely. I mean, this for me is the year of personal brand. This is going to explode this year. And I absolutely am 100% behind personal branding now. And I have to say, it's taken me some time to get there, because I'm very much like you, Vinay. I've always done business very quietly. I've not been a public person at all. I haven't liked to share that. However, there is massive benefits to building your own personal brand. And we've actually, our next webinar is on personal branding, Naomi. So I won't take too long to answer this question, because we've got some others for Vinay here. But for me, absolutely invest the time. But I would say get on the next webinar next Friday, and we'll talk all about personal branding there.
I'm there. I've already signed up.
Okay, quick question around a CV here. So would you recommend including a personal statement on a CV?
So I would say for a current student or a recent graduate, avoid having a personal statement on your CV, unless you have a gap on your CV that you're trying to fill. So if it's not getting to that one full page, personal statements are often reserved for candidates with a lot of experience, and you're trying to summarize a decade plus worth of experience in a paragraph. So if you're early on in your career, I'll probably say take off your personal statement and just stick to your education, work history, as well as your skills and hobbies at early stages.
Great, excellent. I mean, we get asked that a lot, actually. It's funny, I think people do have this quandary over the personal statement, but no, I think that's really good.
Same for the cover letter.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got a question from an anonymous attendee here. So do you have any advice for somebody looking to get into a marketing role who has no idea what type of industry they're looking for?
I would love to get some more context to this. If there's obviously something that interested them about the marketing industry that got them interested in the first place. So if you're going to enter...
Yeah, we'll see if that person adds to that question. Feel free to drop that in if you're still on here. But I wonder if this is, marketing can be so very general, right? And if you're going in-house, you could be working for a pharmaceutical company, a manufacturing company, you could be working in law, in the university. I guess if I just kind of presume to understand what they might be asking here, is there a, is it good to go into a marketing role in an industry that you're passionate about? Does it really matter? Any advice on how you would steer that, or?
Oh, that's a difficult question, really. I think number one, it's got to be something that's of interest to you. So there's no point doing a job that has zero interest to you, or if the industry is not something that's of interest to you, I'll probably say it's not worth it. Try and focus on areas. If you have a particular interest in, I don't know, like pets as an example, try and look for a company that is involved in that industry. That's going to get you out of bed. And I'm not a huge fan of saying, like, follow your passion. I'll usually say find something that you're good at and make sure you don't hate your job and make sure you're well paid. That's ultimately my short and sharp answer to a lot of careers related question. A lot of people talk about following their passion, etc. But it's got to be something that you've got to have some sort of interest in. So follow that interest. And marketing is an area that you can go horizontal, vertical. There's so many different options. You go B2B, B2C, social media, offline, digital, etc., etc., etc. So many different options. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll try and see if I can get some more context and try and help you out in a bit more detail. But I'll definitely need some more information before I can give some advice on that.
Yeah, and I think just to elaborate on that, I guess from my point is that having worked in marketing for the the whole of my career, if you're trying to market a product or a service or a business that you don't believe in, you're not aligned with their values, you don't think it's great what they're doing, you're not really behind it, it is super hard because you feel like you are falsely promoting something that you yourself are not. And even though the marketing is not coming from you personally, you have to have belief in it. So I would kind of second that in a sense that it doesn't have to be kind of your drive and passion, but get behind a job that you feel like you can really get on board with the products that they're selling or the service that they're offering or the organization that they are, because that makes your job so much easier as a marketer if you really believe in what you're telling your consumers. Okay, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions flying in now, so I'm going to try and quickly fire through these in the next 10 minutes. Shanna, so she has asked, advice on getting into marketing role where most of the starting level roles requires 1 or 2 years of digital experience. I have telemarketing experience, but I want to gain a career in social media marketing. Any advice around that, Vinay?
Can I spin that around to you, Lisa? And I'll come back to my thoughts. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I would always say, no matter what you're working in, so if you're in telemarketing at the moment and that's where your role is, and you're looking at roles that are requiring that 1 or 2 years worth of experience, you still study on top of that role. For me, you've got to never stop learning when you're in marketing. And, I'm 20 years in and still committing to learning every week. One day of my working week is committed to learning. So particularly digital, if that's the space you want to go into, if you want to pursue and have a successful career there, you've got to be on board with learning because it is so fast paced and it's forever changing. You don't have to invest a huge amount of money in this. There are a ton of free courses out there. I mean, HubSpot's amazing for their free courses, particularly around digital. There's various others. So if you want some specifics, really happy to recommend them. But, I would say, whatever you're working in now, start trying to fill those experience gaps wherever you can. Because for me, a CV is great if somebody's showing commitment to learning that trait. Because what I'm looking for is commitment and determination to succeed. I'm not necessarily looking for them to have all the answers and skills now. I'd also say that if you're going for those roles and they're asking for 1 or 2 years worth of experience, you possibly want to look for some roles that are a little more junior, to give you that foot in the door where you can learn and then go for those roles that have got a couple of years experience. But anything to add on that, Vinay?
Really good. I love that answer about committing to learn. And I think that's definitely build our habits up. And I think we've talked about this in quite a few different answers that we talked about during this webinar. Just to quickly add to that, I'll probably say, as Lisa said, look for roles that perhaps don't ask for that. It's always going to be challenging, but I would say, if you're struggling to kind of get that first experience, go to your local charity shop and say, hey, can I take over your social media, as an example? No one's going to turn you down. Go to your local high street will have a number of charity shops. Just take over their social media, and every post that you do, put it on a portfolio. And 1 to 2 years is not a lot of experience. I know it can be seen as a barrier, but if you kind of can build up a portfolio of your social media work and take that or apply, and when you're making an application, you can include that. It can make you look a lot more experienced than you are, and that can definitely help. And it's and transferable skills. A lot of the things that you probably do in your current role could be transferred into a role in social media marketing. And as Lisa touched upon, your personal branding. So if your personal branding on social media is on point, that is definitely going to help you as well. So those are probably a couple of points I'll add, but Lisa's answer was excellent.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the same thing there. If, personal brand is a great way to showcase your skills in social without you having to go and do it for some other company. So again, Shona, get on the webinar next week and we'll give you all the personal branding information. Okay, last question, Vinay, before we finish up. How soon is it appropriate to go for a promotion? So this person says, I've been working for a company for 6 months and unsure if I should ask for one.
A really good question, really. There's no real kind of hard and fast rule. I know people that have been working the same role for 5-6 years and have not got a promotion. I know people who've been promoted in 3 months. What I would say is, in this case, look at the job description for the next level up and see if you're performing a lot of those tasks already. And if your company is fairly small, if they don't have that job description, ask your boss. If you have a performance review coming up, ask them, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And ask them for the details. And I think then create an action plan. If you have a really good supervisor or a really good boss, they should help work with you in terms of creating an action plan to help you get promoted. So ultimately, it's a very difficult one to give a hard and fast answer to. There's a lot of context to it. So look at your last performance review, look at your scores, look at the areas that you need to improve upon. If there's quite a lot of areas, I'll probably say you're probably not quite there yet. And I often see 2 kind of categories where candidates who think that a promotion is long overdue, and there are candidates who feel like I'm nowhere near a promotion. And often it's somewhere in between. And some candidates generally tend to overthink their ability, and the other candidates who have imposter syndrome, as an example. And so you kind of need to understand where you are, and the best way to do that is look at the next level, the job description for the next level. And if you feel like you're meeting probably a good 60-70% of that, it's definitely time for you to get promoted. If that's not the case, you're essentially getting underpaid for a role that you're doing at a much higher level. But saying that, one thing I would probably say is you need to be working at a higher level than what your current job description says in order to be promoted. So just because you meet everything your current job requirement says, it doesn't mean you're ready for a promotion. So you need to go above and beyond what your current role is in order to be promoted. So try to look into that and just have an honest and frank conversation with your boss. Just say, hey, what do I need to do to get to the next level? Yes. And they often give you an answer.
I think that's great. And often, progression plans are so important. Sometimes you don't see that next level job description or don't, you're not able to see it. I guess for me, just in the past, I've had, people come to me and ask for a promotion because they want a pay rise. They simply want the pay rise. And what I always think is, if you're going to go and ask for a promotion, be ready to evidence your impact, show what you're bringing to the business, and show what you could be bringing to the business if you were given more responsibility and a larger role and therefore a larger salary. And be ready to have that evidence there, and, often asking for a promotion, if you're not ready with the answers as to why and what impact you're going to have on the business and what value you're bringing, it feels very money driven, and the business has to see that benefit. So I would say just make sure you have the evidence ready to say, this is why I should be moved to the next level, and this is what I feel like I could bring to you as a business if you invest in me. Okay, well, that is pretty much it, Vinay. It's been amazing. I think we could have talked for another hour. So thank you so much for all the questions. They've been great. And Vinay, thank you so much for all your advice. And I think there's so much there, no matter what stage in your career. Even I've taken some amazing tips away today. So thank you for giving up your time today. It's been really valuable for everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. No, it's been really good fun being on here. I was just about to type up a couple of the answers that have not been able to get an answer, but can I just quickly make a point on the LinkedIn one? I'll probably say LinkedIn should be an extension of your CV, not a copy of your CV. So LinkedIn works very similarly to Google, where you can use keywords and recruiters search by keywords. So try and include more detail. There's no point putting a LinkedIn URL on your CV and showing the exact same information on there. You're wasting everyone's time. So try and add a bit more detail. You can go into details on there. So yeah, just coming back to Lisa, it's been fantastic. It's been really good fun. We could have gone on for another hour or so. And if anyone have any follow-up questions, or if there's anything me or Lisa can do, I'm sure both of us don't mind being reached out to on LinkedIn. We definitely appreciate the questions, just to clarify. So come and reach out to us if there's anything else we can do to help. And yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Vinay. And just if you're interested in finding out any more about Fabric and Capital Placement, we are going to be announcing a very exciting partnership with both our companies soon. So make sure you're on our mailing list to be one of the first to hear about it. And a little reminder that our next cohort for Fabric kicks off at the end of Jan. If you're interested in that, have a little look on our website. And the very next webinar, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that we have in the next series is on Friday. Same time next week. We have the force that is Amelia Sordell, who is going to be talking all things personal branding. If you haven't seen her all over socials, check her out. She's fabulous, but she's going to be talking everything to do with how to raise your profile, your personal brand, and how to stand out in a crowded marketplace. So hopefully that's going to be really interesting for lots of you. We hope to see you all there. Have a wonderful weekend. And yeah, Vinay, thanks again. Enjoy your weekend as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye now.